Hello and welcome to another instalment of Bad Creepypasta. I've managed to be ill for another one. We are joined by a special guest today. We have with us an English teacher.
Hello.
Today's story is Squidward's Suicide.
What?
Yes, that is the name of the story we're going to be reading.
No, hold on a minute. That's the title.
Yes, Squidward's Suicide. It's very popular with the young people that you are teaching, so I feel you should be patient and just get through the story with us.
Let's be honest, the title doesn't exactly stroke fear into your heart, does it?
No.
I mean, just say it a few times. Go on.
Squidward's Suicide.
Squidward.
Squidward.
Yeah.
It's the word
Don't say it 3 times, you might summon him.
It's the word Squidward, I think.
It's not scary.
No.
If The Exorcist had been called The Squidward, nobody would have gone to see it.
No. But you don't know because this is popular. Right? This is very popular.
Okay, I will
right
give
now.
it a
This is very
chance.
popular.
Because it's popular, it must be good.
I just want to start off by saying, if you want an answer at the end, prepare to be disappointed.
That's always a good way to start with the story.
There just isn't one.
If you wanted to be satisfied with my work, you won't be.
I'm the guy who wrote Lost. I don't know how to make an ending.
I was an intern at Nickelodeon Studios for a year in 2005 for my degree in animation.
No, you weren't.
It wasn't paid, of course. No, it's an internship. Otherwise it'd be a job. Most internships aren't. But it did have some perks beyond education. To adults, it might not seem like a big one. But most kids at the time would go crazy over it. But you obviously didn't care because you were an adult, because you were at university. Now, since I worked directly with the editors and animators... Bollocks.
Wait, let's go back. Didn't he say intern? So he made the tea.
I was going to make that exact joke. Doing a cappuccino run does not count as working directly with someone. I got to view the new episodes days before they aired. No, you didn't!
Stop lying, work experience, boy.
The closest you got to SpongeBob was a life-size guy dressed up as SpongeBob, and you were serving him the tea!
That's exactly what happened. Fuck off. There is no way on an unpaid internship you got to... It's a AAA show on Nickelodeon. Just for security alone, you wouldn't be able to see it.
You wouldn't be allowed in the same building as the important people.
I'll get right to it without giving too many unnecessary details. I want everyone to remember that. They had very recently made the SpongeBob movie. Obviously, not an unnecessary detail. And the entire staff was somewhat sapped of creativity, so it took them longer to start up the season. But the delay lasted longer for more upsetting reasons. There was a problem with the Series 4 premiere that set everyone and everything back for several months.
Is that the scary bit?
Me and 2 other interns were in the editing room with blindfolds, along with the lead animators and sound editors for the final cut. We received the copy that was supposed to be Fear of a Krabby Patty. I'm glad there's no unnecessary details. And gathered around the screen to watch. Now, given that it isn't final yet...
What?
Given that it isn't final yet, animators often put up a mock title card. Sort of an inside joke for us, with phony, often lewd titles, such as How Sex Doesn't Work, instead of Rockabye by Valve. When SpongeBob and Patrick adopt a sea scallop. No unnecessary details here. Nothing particularly funny, but work-related chuckles. So when we saw the title card Squidward's Suicide...
We all thought it was hilarious. We all laughed.
We didn't think it more than a morbid joke. One of the interns did a small throat laugh at it, whatever the fuck that means.
I think that's what Toby does all the time.
Yeah, probably that, yeah.
The happy-go-lucky music plays... as is normal.
See, that was a throat laugh.
The story began... Okay, English teacher. Are you allowed to change tense in the same paragraph?
Absolutely not. It's a no-no. You should know this by the time you're 11 to 12 years old. It's the first thing you learn when you get into year 7.
The story began with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside and Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down as he has a concert that night and needs to practice. SpongeBob says okay and goes to see Sandy with Patrick. The bubble splash screen comes up and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is where things began to seem off. While playing, a few frames repeat to themselves. But the sound doesn't. At this point, sound is synced up with animation, so yes, that's not common. But when he stops playing, the sound finishes as if the skip never happened. There is slight murmuring in the crowd before they begin to boo him. Not normal cartoon booing that is common in the show, but you could very clearly hear malice in it.
You suck, Squidward! Boo! Get a job!
Your music is bad and you should feel bad.
You're just getting heckled by the internet. Boo!
Squidward's in full frame. PewDiePie is better. And looks visibly afraid. The shot goes to the crowd, with SpongeBob in centre frame, and he too is booing, very much unlike him. That isn't the odd thing, though. What is odd is everyone had hyper-realistic eyes.
Hey!
And hyperrealism is a movement that pertains to sculpture and photography. It does not pertain at all to moving images. You can do a painting that's hyper-realistic if it's still, but you can't do animation because it's moving. That would be photorealistic.
Okay? The more you know.
So I hope that hyper-realistic isn't something that he uses again.
Welcome to Creepypastas.
Very detailed. Clearly not shots of real people's eyes, but something a bit more real than CGI. Not what hyperrealism means. The pupils were red. Some of us looked at each other, obviously confused. But since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal to children yet. The shot goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view out of his porthole window is of a night sky, so it isn't very long after the concert. The unsettling part is, at this point, there is no sound. And then a whole sentence. Literally no sound.
Oh my god!
Not even the feedback from the speakers in the room. It's as if the speakers were turned off, though their status showed them working perfectly.
No unnecessary details!
Back in the past tense. He just sat there, blinking in the silence for about 30 seconds. Then he started to sob softly. He put his hands, and then in parentheses, tentacles, over his eyes and cried quietly for a full minute more.
Is this going to go all hentai?
Yeah, I thought a hentai scene was about to enact.
All the while, a sound in the background, very slowly growing from nothing to barely audible. It sounded like a slight breeze through a forest. The screen slowly begins to zoom in on his face. By slow, I mean it's only noticeable if you look at shots 10 seconds apart, side by side. His sobbing gets louder, more full of hurt and anger. The screen then twitches a bit. Excuse me?
What?
As if it twists on itself.
He's becoming self-aware.
For a split second, then back to normal. The wind through the trees sound gets louder and more severe, as if a storm is brewing somewhere.
That was an awkward sentence.
The eerie part, thanks for letting us know it was eerie,
This is the scary part now, is it?
is this sound. And Squidward's sobbing sounded real, as if the sound wasn't coming from the speakers, but as if the speakers were holes. The sound was coming through from the other side.
Squidward had holes.
I'm sorry, can I just interject? I know I said I'd hold my opinion to the end,
6-part video.
but one thing you never ever do in a story is tell the reader how to feel. You don't tell them it's the eerie part. You don't do that. You let them work it out for themselves.
As if the sound was coming from the speakers, as if the speakers were holes, the sound was coming through from the other side. As good as sound as the studio likes to have.
What?
I'm not reading it again.
I don't know.
They don't purchase the equipment to be that good to produce sound of that quality.
Sorry, did they just sort of walk out halfway through and just got some monkeys with typewriters? Just, how's it going there?
No, if it was monkeys with typewriters, they'd be doing Shakespeare.
Below the sound of the wind and sobbing, very faint, something sounded like laughing. It came at odd intervals and never lasted more than a second, so you had a hard time pinning it. We watched this show twice, so pardon me if things sound too specific, but I've had time to think about them. That's the one good thing in this whole pasta, is it explains why he memorised every little detail.
Oh, yeah.
No other group pasta ever successfully does that. After 30 seconds of this, the screen blurred and twitched violently, and something flashed over the screen as if a single frame was replaced. The lead animation editor paused and rewound frame by frame. What we saw was horrible. It was a still photo of a dead child. He couldn't have been more than 6. I'm not reading the rest of that paragraph.
Sorry, is that supposed to be the scary part? Oh, that's it, dead children.
The most upsetting part was there was a shadow of the photographer. There was no crime tape, no evidence tags or markers, and the angle was completely off for a shot designed to be evidence. It would seem the photographer was the person responsible for the child's death. We were, of course, mortified, but pressed on, hoping that it was just a sick joke.
Ha 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 ha! It's so funny,
Actually,
isn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah, if you saw a dead
Yeah.
kid.
You just called the police, didn't you?
Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
I like that the intern is still in the room at this point when an obvious crime has just happened.
Just sorry, I didn't know he's working for Disney now.
Screen flipped back to Squidward, still sobbing, louder than before, and half body in frame. There was now what appeared to be blood running down his face from his eyes. The blood was also done in a hyper-realistic style.
No.
No, it wasn't.
Looking as if you touched it, you'd get blood on your fingers, as if you could actually feel the fur. The wind sounded now as if it were that of a gale blowing through the forest.
Oh, fuck.
There were even snapping sounds of branches. The laughing, a deep baritone, lasting at longer intervals and coming more frequently. After about 20 seconds, the screen again twisted and showed a single frame photo. The editor was reluctant to go back. We all were, but we knew we had to. This time the photo was that of what appeared to be a little girl, no older than the first child. Once again, not reading that paragraph. About 5 seconds after this second photo played, Squidward went silent, as did all sound. Like it was when this scene started. He put his tentacles down. I can't stop laughing at the word tentacles.
Watch out for the tentacles!
He put his tentacles down, and his eyes were now done in hyperrealism, like the others were in the beginning of this episode. You sure you haven't read this before? They were bleeding, bloodshot, and pulsating. He just stared at the screen, as if watching the viewer. After about 10 seconds, he started sobbing, this time not covering his eyes. The sound was piercing and loud, and most fear-inducing of all is...
What, right now?
We were doing alright then, weren't we?
You almost got to a paragraph.
Is his sobbing was mixed with screams. Tears and blood were dripping down his face at a heavy rate. The wind sound came back, and so did the deep-voiced laughing. And this time, the still photo lasted for a good 5 frames.
Sorry, I thought Gandalf was there for a second.
The animator was able to stop it on the 4th and backed up. This time, the photo was of a boy, blah, 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 gross, gross, gross.
Yeah, just blah, blah, blah.
The lead sound editor...
everywhere. Delicious.
The lead sound editor told us to stop. He had to call in the creator to see this. Mr. Hillenberg arrived, and somehow me, being an unpaid intern, was still in the room. Within about 15 minutes. He was confused as to why he was called down there, and why there was an intern in the room. So the editor just continued the episode.
I made him get a cup of tea.
Just kicked him. Like when...
Tea boy!
So the editor just continued the episode. Once the frames were shown, all screaming, all sound again stopped. Squidward was just staring at the viewer, full frame of the face. For about 3 seconds. The shot quickly panned out and that deep voice said,
Do it! Do it now!
Get to the chopper!
and we see, god damn it, in Squidward's hands a shotgun. He immediately puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger, with his tentacles, I might add. Realistic, though not hyper-realistic, blood and brain matter splatters the wall behind him and his bed as he flies back with the force.
He walks with a Jedi.
The last 5 seconds of this episode show his body on the bed, on his side, one eye dangling on what's left of his head above the floor, staring blankly at it. Then the episode ends. Mr. Hillenberg is obviously angry at this. He demanded to know what the heck was going on. Most people left the room at this point, so it was just a handful of us.
He wanted to know what the heck was going on. Like, you couldn't have used some stronger language. Like, with all the descriptions of, like, dead, like, 8-year-olds and stuff.
Here's an incredibly graphic description of a child's corpse that even the scumbags who do bad creepypasta won't read aloud. Heck. Most people left the room at this point, so it was just a handful of us to watch it again. Why are you still there?
Jiminy Jellicers.
Viewing the episode twice only served to imprint the entirety of it in my mind and caused me horrible nightmares. I'm sorry I stayed, even though I would have been ejected the moment they realised a crime had taken
He
place.
wouldn't have been ejected, he wouldn't have been there in the first place.
Shouldn't he be saying, I'm sorry I wrote this, for goodness sake?
The only theory we could think of was the file was edited by someone in the chain from the drawing studio to here.
Oh, fuck off.
Are you sure it wasn't a glitch?
The CTO was called in to analyse when it happened. The analysis of the file did show it was edited over by new material.
And brought from eBay.
However, the timestamp of it was a mere 24 seconds before we began viewing it.
Time.
All equipment involved was examined for foreign software and hardware, as well as glitches. As if the timestamp may have glitched and showed the wrong time, but
It wasn't a glitch.
everything checked out fine. We don't know what happened, and to this day, nobody does. There was an investigation due to the nature of the photos, but nothing came of it. No child scene was identified, and no clues were gathered from the data involved, nor physical clues in the photos. I never believed in unexplainable phenomena before, but now that I have something... Now that I have something happen, and can't prove anything about it beyond anecdotal evidence, I think twice about things. Right, that's the whole thing. Now, lady English teacher who has kindly joined us, I can see you're itching to get a few things off your chest, so you go first. Normally at the end of the show we wrap up our thoughts about the story.
Well, firstly, I'd like to say, you bastards. You really set me up, didn't you? You led me to believe that this was going to be something that I would be impressed with and that I'd encourage the kids at school to be reading.
We didn't lie to you. It is very popular.
This is the
I
pinnacle.
don't
Just with people with poor taste.
Well, secondly, I'd have to say that I feel really guilty, and so should you guys. Shame on you for laughing
I
at
have no
something.
shame.
For laughing at something that was obviously written by a child of about 10, 11 years old, possibly with English as a second language. And the reason I'm saying this is because, firstly, if you look at the structure of it, there's no tension in the structure. You learn that at school at a very early age. There's no variation in sentence structures. There's no impact. It doesn't build up. The content is really all over the place. It's not researched at all. It's nonsense. There's absolutely no use of implicity. You know, they don't imply anything. The person who's writing this has just been very graphic. Now, the only way you can really be graphic and get away with it in a story is if you've got a really, really good imagination. And this person obviously doesn't.
I told you it was a monkey. Yeah.
Now, I put that down to their youth. And with all the switching of tenses, it's an unfathomably bad use of tenses in this piece. This is something that not just children but adults from other backgrounds who don't have English as a first language have. They have real difficulty in tenses, and that's what makes me think that perhaps this is somebody who doesn't have English as their first language. I could sit here all day and pull it apart, but because that's how I feel and that's what I think when I read this, at least I hope I'm right, because if I'm not, then the school system is failing. It really, really is failing.
Well, as a teacher, I have a question for you. In order for this to attain a passing grade, and by passing grade I mean C or above, how young would the child have to be for this to get a passing grade as a creative writing assignment?
Well, they wouldn't at any age, because if it was somebody under the age of 11, which is the standard at which it's written, they would be in therapy because of the content.
Yeah, it's incredibly violent.
And if it was somebody over 11, the standard's too poor for it to get anything above an F.
Right. Well, you heard that from the mouth of an actual English teacher. Now, I'm going to say I don't believe this was written by a child. And I'll tell you why. Because we read on the show, I know you've not seen the show before, but we read countless of these stories, and they all do it. They all swap tenses like that. And some of them, from the experiences they have, are written by adults. Just from like the way they talk about their jobs and things, are written by adults. This I can't be sure.
So I again stand by my thing, and I think the writer just walked out halfway through and forgot about it and went, "Oh yeah, I got this shit to write. Why didn't he just throw his feces against the wall and make a better story?"
I completely agree.
Completely ridiculous.
And you know what? If the poo looked alright on the canvas, he'd be using hyper-realistic correctly.
It's hyper-realistic feces.
Yeah. I think we've done some of these popular ones like sorryQwQ and Jeff the Killer, and this is. I don't think it's as bad as Jeff the Killer, but I think it is as bad as sorryQwQ. I really do. Matt, before we get into the reviews, what do you think?
I think it's you know how he said he was an intern at Nickelodeon? This was probably what he wished happened. It was so boring when he was working there.
Having to bring pot noodle to people who matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, this guy was like 16 on work experience.
Okay, now I'm just going to read a selection of the reviews.
Oh, this is always gold.
Animal Jam Creepypasta says, "Oh my gosh, I am going to have nightmares if I watch the video. Watch his video, now I'm going to have nightmares."
Well, that's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Dolt or Die says, I think Dolt is appropriate. Dolt or Die says, "Not really scary, but very weird. 9 out of 10. So it's not scary on a website for horror stories and it gets 9 out of 10. DJ Jeff K says, "God, this is horrible. We support you, Squiddy."
What? What? Killer Minnie Mouse. Very disturbing, but very well written story, people. If you read this comment, I think you guys know, but I recently was looking at SpongeBob picture and it blinked. I decided to show it to my sister and it didn't blink. I went on the computer to show a picture to my sister and it blinked, so that the story of... What is this saying?
I think he's having a seizure.
Yeah. Of the
Can we
story
stop
why
now?
me and my sister watch
Please.
SpongeBob anymore.
Brobot82 says, "Wow, ... Very well done. I like it very much, 9 out of 10. I guess he'll forget about sleeping for a few days, ...
But these are the same people who read Jeff the Killer. Go to sleep! Scary!
Slender Jeff TK says, "I do not get why this is so popular. I mean, I like it, but it has no build-up. And the creepiest part was the hyper-realistic blood red eyes. I mean, absolutely no disrespect to the writers or the fad, but it makes no sense why people like it so much to me." I mean, if somebody who writes like that can still read Good Suicide and go, "No, this is
How was that not beautiful? No, it was not.
18 out of 20, it's very good."
What? Suddenly he's making his own rating system. 30 out of 10. Oh, shut up.
This is a very scary creepypasta. Okay, now I feel like watching the episode. Must resist urge to watch episode. Screw it. Tails, I need your laptop.
What?
And on that very, very somber note, this has been Bad Creepypasta.
Very bad creepypasta.
Thank you so much for coming on the show and allowing us to share that with you. That is what many people your students' age are reading. I want you to take that away with you.
And punch them when you get back to work. Bring back the cane, I say.
Well, can you do me one huge favour before I leave?
Yes.
Can you please point me in the direction of one of these that's actually good? Give me some faith in the young people of today.
No. Yeah, go read Candle Cove by Chris Straub. It's really good. Okay, thanks very much for coming on the show, and we'll see you soon with brand new content. Thank you for all the people who've subscribed. We're now at over 1,000, and that's awesome. So, cheers, guys. We really appreciate it, and keep watching the show, I guess, and sharing it, and leaving comments, and being sexy.
Do. Oh, if you want to subscribe, now click on his oblong face.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that and would like to see more videos like it, then why not click on my square head to subscribe. Alternatively, you can subscribe to my other channel where I do dramatic readings in a much less arrogant and sarcastic way. Perhaps you'd like to follow me on Twitter at Movie Sherwood, or follow Toby on Twitter at Silent Rocker, but not Matt because he's not on Twitter because he's too fat. If you'd like to leave a comment, then feel free to do so. You can let us know what you thought of the video, or whether there's a bad creepypasta you'd like to see us attack in a future installment of the show. Thanks very much for watching once again, and see you very, very soon. Hello there, and welcome to another installment of Bad Creepypasta. Today's story is called PlayStation Suffer. It was requested by Antoine Alexander yet again.
Woo! God damn you!
And we're off to a good start because it was moved to the Trollpasta wiki for not being